So let's pretend Aegon Targaryen and his sister wives decided to mind their own business and stay on Dragonstone and never begin the conquest of the Seven Kingdoms. How would Westeros be different? This video, I want to focus on Dorne. Originally, I had a video where I talked about the entirety of Westeros, but it was so long, my computer just couldn't handle it. So, I'm sorry, I have to break this down into regions because I guess I don't have a good computer, or maybe I don't know, I'm not good at this stuff. Probably both, actually. Alright, so Aegon the Conqueror beginning his conquest of the Seven Kingdoms is huge. In fact, we see in the show and in the books that the Seven Kingdoms now tell time by BC, before conquest, and AC, after conquest. So, a pretty big deal. But what if Aegon decided to just, you know, again, mind his own fucking business and stay on Dragonstone with his sister wives and just bang them non-stop? How would things be different? Let's focus on Dorne. Now I know what you're thinking, Rawrist, going with Dorne first is cheating. It's the easiest region to go over. Hell, even with Aegon's conquest, he never conquered Dorne, even though he was then called the King of the Seven Kingdoms. It's a titling thing I've gone over in other videos. It's kind of like people arguing calling Dorne a kingdom, even though it's ruled by prince and princesses. It's just inverse how it works, so logically in our world it works a bit different. In the world it doesn't. Even though Dorne is ruled by princes and princesses, it's still considered a kingdom. You just gotta kinda let it go. You gotta channel your inner Elsa, okay? Alright. And if you can't, hopefully I have cards popping up to videos explaining those things and why it goes against logic from our verse, or our world, or our reality. But honestly, Dorne is an area that isn't too changed if Aegon never began his conquest, since Aegon was unsuccessful in conquering Dorne, which, heck, Dorne wouldn't even be brought into the realm until 189 AC under Daeron the Second Targaryen. And he did that through words, not swords. Even after they were brought into the realm, Dorne retained their titles of prince and princess and had special privileges. So business stayed as usual in Dorne even after joining the Targaryen kingdom. Their custom and culture would stay the same regardless. So even if Aegon never began his conquest and then 189 years later, his descendants ended up bringing Dorne into the fold, it doesn't matter. Dorne, regardless, remained with their own customs and culture that did not change with being brought into the Seven Kingdoms. Now, that's not to say that there would be zero changes if Aegon never began his conquest, even though he didn't end up conquering Dorne, and it remained independent for 189 years after his conquest. There, of course, would be some huge changes if Aegon had never decided to attack the Seven Kingdoms. During the First Dornish War, Aegon and his sister wives used their dragons to burn the castles and keeps in Dorne. And while most Dornish hid and were not victims of the burning, their homes still got pretty wrecked. So without Aegon doing his conquest, Dorne wouldn't have seen their castles and keeps just burned to shit, even if a lot of them hid and there were no major death tolls of their citizens, the people of Dorne. Also, a side note, even though I know this doesn't directly deal with Dorne, so Rhaenys was killed in the First Dornish War. She was shot down on her dragon, and it really messed up Aegon the Conqueror. So if the conquering of the Seven Kingdoms never happened, and Aegon minded his own business and stayed on Dragonstone, most likely Rhaenys would have lived much longer. He would have banged her for a lot longer time, and maybe he would have had more kids besides just Aenys with her. But that's not important for this video. I guess I could do a separate video of how things would be different for the Targaryens, but yeah. Not this video. So besides the repeat castle burning, there would also be less animosity between Dorne and the other areas. From the failed Dornish War and Second Dornish War, there were a lot of hard feelings between the rest of the Seven Kingdoms and Dorne. Yeah, the Targaryens made the other kingdoms invade Dorne, but somehow it was still the Dornish that were monsters, and revenge needed to be had. And you could argue the Dornish did some asshole things in the war, but they didn't start the war, so don't poke the bear if you don't want to get absolutely fucking mauled. So in that way, without the First and Second Dornish War, there would be less animosity between the rest of the Seven Kingdoms and Dorne, but let's be honest, if Aegon had never done his conquest, the Stormlands Reach and Dorne were already constantly fucking with each other. So even if Aegon didn't get in there, the Dornish would probably still be messing with the Stormlands and Reach without those wars going on. So yeah, the Dornish, the Stormlands, Reach would all still be constantly going at each other. What I'm actually interested about is we know that Harren, he completed Harrenhal just as Aegon began his conquest, and Harren was going to conquer the Stormlands. I know that's a big what if in me guessing, but I'm pretty sure Harren would have taken over the Stormlands had Aegon not gotten in there. From there, I feel like Dorne and the Reach would have had a real threat. So I don't know how they'd go against that. I'd still say that Dorne pretty much would stay independent from Harren and the kingdom he built, and maybe even his descendants, but who knows? I mean, it's really hard with a what if to guess. We have a couple hundred years, if Aegon never did his conquest, to guess where Dorne would be. Another thing is the Blackfire rebellions wouldn't happen if we didn't see the Targaryen dynasty take root in the Seven Kingdoms, so maybe we never see some conflict on the Stepstones and them trying to invade the Seven Kingdoms. But on the other hand, who's to say that even if Aegon, sister wives stay on Dragonstone, the Targaryens stay there, control their little area, not a big deal, that a group of people wouldn't take over the Stepstones and then try to invade Dorne. So we don't know how that would turn out, right? Maybe ignoring the Blackfires, they don't exist. Targaryens never did their whole dynasty. Alright, we have some people coming into the Stepstones. They conquer it, and now they want to invade Dorne to expand their kingdom. I still think Dorne would end up okay with that. I still think they would be able to repel any kingdom on the Stepstones. But here's the thing. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you disagree that Dorne would remain independent and still be able to withstand any invasions if Aegon never did his conquest, even if Harren spread and conquered the Stormlands. I mean, that's fine. This is a what if. There are so many options. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think would happen if Aegon never did his conquest. How would Dorne be different? And then like, subscribe, and come back because I'm going to cover the other regions probably a little bit more longer in videos because it's a bit more difficult to talk about the other regions. Maybe I'll go to the north next because I feel like that's the next easiest area to cover. I don't know. We'll see.